The Isdal woman may have erased every label, every name, and every route back to her past, but she could not erase the language buried inside her handwriting. And that evidence points toward a very specific intelligence world. By the end, you'll know how linguists reconstructed her childhood, why her false identities resemble professional cover, and which spy service fits the evidence best, including the detail that prevents anyone from naming it with certainty. On November 29, 1970, a father and his 2 daughters were hiking through Isdalen, a remote valley outside Bergen, Norway. Among the rocks, they found a partially burned woman. There was no identification. No purse. No recognizable label on her clothing. Anything capable of naming a manufacturer or tracing a purchase had been cut away. Near the body were sleeping pills, bottles, and the remains of a fire. An autopsy found a massive quantity of phenobarbital in her system, along with carbon monoxide in her blood. Police concluded that she had swallowed the pills and died in the fire. But the scene refused to behave like a simple suicide. Investigators traced 2 suitcases to Bergen railway station. Inside were wigs, foreign currency, coded notes, clothing with more labels removed, and prescription cream with the doctor's name scratched away. Then came the identities. At different hotels, she had registered under names like Claudia Tielt, Vera Jarl, and Alexia Zerner. Her birthplaces changed. Her professions changed. Even her age shifted. The signatures looked natural, because she had practiced being people who never existed. Hotel employees remembered a guarded woman who changed rooms, paid attention to corridors, and sometimes asked for rooms with balconies. Witnesses described her speaking German, French, English, and something resembling Flemish. To police, these were clues. To an intelligence officer, they would have looked like procedures. Inside one suitcase, investigators found a notebook filled with letters and numbers. At first glance, it looked encrypted. It wasn't. The entries were a compressed travel log. Letters represented cities. Numbers marked dates. Once decoded, they traced her movements through Norway, Oslo, Bergen, Trondheim, Stavanger. This distinction matters. A deep-cover officer would avoid carrying a readable record of operational travel. But a courier, asset, or commercial intelligence contact might use a private shorthand, enough to organize movement without attracting attention. Her aliases followed the same pattern. They were numerous, but not flawless. Some addresses were false. Passport details varied. One form placed a real street in the wrong city. That suggests training, but perhaps not the limitless resources of a major service operating under perfect diplomatic cover. And then there was timing. Her journeys overlapped with Norway's Cold War pressure points, naval facilities, military testing areas, and the country's strategically vital North Sea coastline. Witnesses later claimed that she had been seen observing military activity. Those claims remain disputed. No surviving document proves she photographed a weapon or met a handler. But here's what they didn't tell you. The strongest clue may not be where she traveled. It may be the way she formed a single letter. Modern investigators returned to the hotel registration cards and asked a different question. Not what did she write, but where had she learned to write? Handwriting is more than personality. Schools teach letter shapes, spacing, numbers, and the physical rhythm of the pen. Those habits can survive decades of travel and deliberate disguise. Experts found traits associated with a French-speaking education. Her handwriting appeared compatible with France or Belgium, even though witnesses often heard her speaking German. Then scientists examined isotopes preserved in her teeth. Teeth formed during childhood. The chemical signatures inside them reflect local water and food. The results suggested she was probably born around 1930, possibly in southern Germany, before moving west toward the French-German border. Put the pieces together. A German-speaking child. Educated partly in French. Raised inside a borderland where languages crossed daily. Later able to present different national identities without sounding completely foreign. That profile narrows the map to places like Alsace, Lorraine, Luxembourg, Saarland, or French-speaking Belgium. It also produces a contradiction. If she was merely inventing identities to hide a private scandal, why erase manufacturing marks, record travel in code, rotate wigs, and move through Cold War Norway? But before we get to the agency that fits this profile, you need to understand something even stranger. Her mistakes may have been intentional. Popular retellings treat the missing labels as undeniable proof of espionage. They aren't. Refugees, smugglers, criminals, and people fleeing abusive relationships have all concealed their origins. Wigs can be fashion. False names can protect a secret life. Cash leaves fewer records for anyone, not only spies. And professional tradecraft creates another problem. Why carry 9 fake identities whose handwriting could be compared? Why keep a coded itinerary in your luggage? Why leave suitcases at a station under traceable procedures? Why use aliases that hotel staff would remember? One possibility is that she was not an intelligence officer at all. She may have been an asset, a civilian recruited for access, language, business travel, or personal relationships. Assets receive limited instruction. They make mistakes. Their documentation may be assembled cheaply. And if compromised, their sponsoring service can deny knowing them. Another possibility is more disturbing. Some of her conspicuous behavior may have been defensive noise. If every document points in a different direction, investigators waste time deciding whether she was German, Belgian, French, or something else. You don't need an unbreakable identity if you can create 10 breakable ones. You only need every break to lead somewhere different. Now place her profile against the intelligence services active in Western Europe in 1970. The Soviet KGB and East German Stasi recruited multilingual agents and operated extensively across Scandinavia. East Germany's Foreign Intelligence Service was especially skilled at placing operatives inside Western institutions. But an East German officer would usually have stronger cultural roots east of the Iron Curtain. The Isdal Woman's apparent upbringing points west, southern Germany, France, or Belgium. West Germany's BND had the language, geography, and reason to monitor NATO's northern flank. French intelligence also possessed the regional recruiting pool and operated through former colonial and commercial networks. Then there is Israel's Mossad. The erased labels, wigs, shifting European identities, compartmentalized travel, and use of a stateless-looking multilingual woman resemble methods associated with Israeli operations in Europe. Some researchers have linked her movements to military technology and possible surveillance of missile testing. But resemblance is not attribution. Similar methods were shared, copied, and inherited across post-war intelligence services. A French-educated German speaker could work for Bonn, Paris, East Berlin, Moscow, Tel Aviv, or no government at all. So you have to look at who benefits from her ambiguity. A Soviet bloc service might build her a Western identity. A Western service could recruit her because she already possessed one. And a smaller partner service could use her precisely because investigators would blame one of the giants. Here is the reveal the evidence supports. Linguistic forensics does not identify one exact agency. It identifies a recruitment corridor. The strongest combined profile is a woman born in southern Germany, educated in a French-speaking border region, and later trained, or self-trained, to move across Western Europe under flexible identities. That makes a West European service more plausible than a Soviet officer dispatched directly from the East. And among the candidates, the closest institutional fit is West Germany's BND, potentially working alongside a NATO partner. Why? Because the BND actively recruited people shaped by the ruins of wartime Europe, displaced, multilingual, difficult to trace, and capable of crossing cultural borders. Norway's military coastline mattered to NATO. A German-speaking courier could move through that environment without immediately appearing Soviet. But the hard conclusion is narrower than the viral one. There is no surviving linguistic fingerprint that says, BND, there is no handler's name, payroll record, operational file, or confirmed mission. Mossad remains possible. French intelligence remains possible. A Soviet bloc operation using Western cover remains possible. The exact agency cannot honestly be named. And that absence may be the most professional feature of the entire case. She did not need to erase every trace of herself. She only needed to remove the final link between her identity, her journey, and whoever sent her. More than half a century later, that link is still missing. So the labels matter, but not because they prove she was a spy. They show that identity was the threat. A clothing label might reveal a country. A prescription could reveal a doctor. A dentist could connect records to a legal name. One intact thread might unravel the entire cover. Someone understood that. Whether she prepared the erasure herself or another person completed it after her death remains unknown. Police found no definitive evidence proving murder, yet the pills, fire, bruising, remote location, and missing identity created a scene too strange to settle cleanly. You are left with a woman whose childhood survives in her teeth, whose education survives in her pen strokes, and whose movements survive in code. But whose name does not survive anywhere. That is the final paradox of the Isdal Woman. Science has brought us closer to where she came from than the original investigators could have imagined. Yet the closer you move toward her identity, the more clearly you see the machinery built to keep it away. If this broke your brain a little, subscribe. We drop one of these every week. Next, the lead masks case left 2 bodies and cryptic instructions.